So, this is happening in 2 months, and they've helpfully given me something to stare at for most of the said 2 months. This is gonna be interesting, because I've been thinking about this game a lot ever since I first played it back when Chapter 1 came out. I want to give some of my thoughts and theories on how I think this is all gonna pan out. So the first thing, the one that most clearly relates to Chapter 3 I want to talk about, is the character of Mike and Tenna. So, in the Spamton Sweepstakes, you have, of course, this page, which has been much discussed, in which he rails against Tenna. He also, in the Spamton Sweepstakes video, advocates for destroying your TV, and says in the game, don't trust the TV, that's a criminal. Originally, of course, we thought he was referring to Mike, but from this, we know he's referring to Tenna, and that Mike is actually an ally of his, perhaps even the benefactor. I think that Tenna is probably going to be Chapter 3's main villain, the equivalent to King or Queen in 1 and 2, and Mike will be the secret boss, since it's the one with less build up and the one that's more, like, obscure. Although, he could easily not be. Mike will probably show up, but I don't know for sure what his role will be. So yeah, that's pretty standard, really pretty accepted knowledge by this point, but I don't know how deep y'all are in the Deltarune theory rabbit hole. I also wanted to talk about the Knight. Now, I don't necessarily think this will be explicitly revealed within Chapter 3 and 4. I think it's far more likely it comes out at, like, Chapter 5 at the earliest. But I wanted to talk about the 3 most popular, from what I can tell, candidates for who the Knight is. And the first one is Chris, who you might think, oh, they're the Knight, that's the reveal at the end of Chapter 2. They stabbed the floor and created the Dark Fountain. Well, there's a few problems with that. The first is that, from what we see in Chapter 1, it's very implied that the Knight has physically been into the world and fucked shit up. And, like, directly interacted with people there, such as the King. And yet no one there recognizes Chris, which is hole number 1 in the theory. The second thing is that Chris, on both normal and weird routes, was already shown to have been shown how to make a Dark Fountain. So it's very plausible that them making the fountain does not mean they're necessarily the Knight. The third is, in the climax of Chapter 2, the Queen's description of the Knight, she specifically mentions reaching their long arms out. And we know from Chapter 2, from the scene with the arcade cabinet, Chris does not have long arms. Chris has short arms, that's why they needed Susie's help. So I think that's a pretty big hole in the Chris is the Knight theory. I don't think it's true. I think it's like, I don't know, maybe a 20% chance that it ends up being the case. I think we're going to see Chris being treated very differently in Chapter 3 by the denizens. Because Chris actually did create that Dark World. Candidate number 2, Gaster. The most compelling piece of evidence I've seen for this is that, 1, he's connected to both Jevil and Spamton, and is, like, kind of fingerprints are all over the game. But specifically the Easter egg rooms, which there's one of in Chapter 1 and 2, that you get from going across a room transition a bunch of times until you get lucky and go there and get an egg. And W2 Gaster is Wingdings Gaster, because he's one of the font people, like Sans or Papyrus. And Egg in Wingdings is arrow keys that also mean the movement of a knight. That's certainly a piece of evidence. It's not even that unreasonable to think it might be relevant. However, I don't think I would be satisfied if Gaster was the knight, because of the essential nature of Gaster, the fact we don't know anything about him, answering any of the core mysteries, especially one specifically built up to, as much as the knight is, with it was Gaster lol, I think would be very unsatisfying, because Gaster could do anything, be anything, and you just have to accept it. I think maybe a 30% chance that it is him. Nah, it's 20%. I think Gaster will play a role. I think we'll even meet Gaster in Chapter 7. But I don't think he's going to be the most important character behind literally everything. He might even just stay completely similar to his role in Undertale, just outside of the main plot. Which I honestly wouldn't mind. The third, and most likely, candidate in my view, is Father Alvin, the priest in the town. There are a few main pieces of evidence. He's the son of Gerson Boom, who Undyne in Undertale described as the strongest monster in the underground. Both Alvin and Gerson actually have the Deltarune, the actual rune. Alvin has it on his robes. Gerson has it in his shop. So that's a very explicit connection right there. Alvin has connections to both of the previous Dark Worlds. There's a drawing signed by him in the playroom that is the first Chapter 1 Dark Room. And the library is implied to be owned by presumably Alvin's mother, Mrs. Boom, who Birdley refers to when he says he has to go to work. I doubt that he has two jobs, and we've seen that Birdley works at the library, so would make sense. Gerson also has parallels to Gaster. A brilliant scientist appointed by a member of the royal family, or the Dreamer family in Deltarune's case, who also had the same profession as Alphys. And there is some more evidence. There's that moment at the bench where you talk to Alvin and you sort of overhear him saying, "Is it right for this hammer to?" I think it's very likely that he is a big role. Every character has a purpose. Some of them are just kind of throwaways for a couple jokes, and that's their purpose. I think Alvin's different. I think Alvin is the knight, or is the intended, red herring, and we won't know until we have more evidence. Another piece that goes against the Crisp being the knight theory is chess theory. There are 6 pieces in chess. Yet there are 7 chapters. How do you square this circle? Well, I think it makes the most sense. And this is something that will be testable in Chapter 3. I don't think Chapter 3's main villain will be a chess piece. I think it'll be Tenna, who will never be referred to with any kind of chess terminology. And this will be a clue that it was not made by the knight. They might call Chris the knight. In that case, it would seem more as if the knight is a title that goes to whoever creates the Dark World. I don't think it necessarily means that Chris is the knight, if they are called that. I also wanted to talk about Noelle. We see on this engraved wristwatch, there lies the name of the angel with the tattered wings. And of course, the name is Noelle. The angel with the tattered wings. Now, I think that Noelle is not necessarily the angel, at least not yet. I think that Noelle is in the weird route, being groomed to be a replacement for the angel. Now, who is she replacing? Well, I think it's pretty clearly Des. Des is basically confirmed to be alive. See if you go in this file not found. However, if you type in just death, it's also interesting that nobody ever actually calls her December, so that could be like a dead name, actually. Because the only reason we think that's her name is because we know Noelle probably Googled the phrase December holiday when looking for her. But yeah, here we have deltarune.com/deaths, and then this song, which is a remix of Lost Girl, as the file name, or I don't know how to access it, but it has the name Find Her. So I think Des is pretty clearly missing and not dead. I think that Des is the angel, or has taken the angel's role or its power. And the goal of the weird route is to make Noelle into a replacement. Someone just as ruthless, just as brave. Remember that boldness also increases in the weird route in Noelle's stats. But who is also under the control of the player. And that the weird route is essentially our way of saying, fuck you, I'm not going to let you railroad me. I'm going to do what I want. I will control the plot of this game. I think heaven, as in the angel's heaven that's referred to in the prophecy, is the real world. Which makes sense with Spamton's stated goal to like look into heaven and gain that sort of like awareness and power and ascend his status as a video game creature and a puppet. So I think the weird route will end by probably having Noelle kill Des with Snowgrave. That'd be pretty rough. And the angel becoming our puppet directly, which would prevent the normal, quote-unquote, correct ending of the game, which would probably be something along the lines of Chris managing to banish our influence entirely. And that the banishment of influence thing, I think it fits very well with a lot of the core themes of Undertale, which is like learning when to let go of something. We already had Undertale. That story is over and done with. It's been explored to death. And so now we as the audience member, in order to squeeze more content out, have like reimagined it in some sort of alternate universe, to use the fan fiction term, to like get ever increasing more content. And I think it would be in line with the themes of Undertale for the game to say, okay, yeah, but that's done with. That's not something you can continue to get in order to be a good partner to Chris. You have to let them go and let them exist on their own. So I think that's going to be a big part of the ending of Deltarune. I think a lot of Deltarune is about like isolation and escapism and the things that would sort of drive one to seek out this fantasy and like constant repetition of said fantasy. I think that's why Chris makes the portal in the first place. Because Chris is very clearly depressed and alone in their own life, but in the Dark Worlds, they get to, be the hero, beat everything with the power of friendship, and get closer to Susie. Ralsei, I guess, although Chris clearly likes Susie a lot more. And so I think a lot of that is that sort of feeling of escapism and wanting to live in a fantasy world instead of confronting your real, more depressing, less solvable problems. So yeah, I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover. I've seen theories that there will be stuff of like, oh, we'll get Toriel to kill Undyne in the Chapter 3 weird route. I mean, maybe. I think it's just as likely that Chapter 3 doesn't have the weird route because it's so Noelle-centric, and I don't see a way Noelle would get in to the Chapter 3 Dark World. Like, it might be just completely separated. Who knows? Last thing. If you want to make your pre-Chapter 3 save files, and you don't want to just do a weird route and pass this route, you want to do like a neutral island, because that does have some interesting differences. I would recommend doing one where you do the weird route up until you get the Thorn Ring, and then abort. So you don't get the Thorn Ring at all, or you don't give the Thorn Ring to Noelle, you keep the Thorn Ring. The reason I'd say that is because the Thorn Ring and the Pure Crystal can be combined with the blacksmith to make the Twisted Sword, which will presumably be maybe a weird route exclusive weapon, but maybe you could get the Pure Crystal on the normal route and then get to have the weird route exclusive weapon on the normal route. So that could be cool. Yeah, that's it. That's all I wanted to talk about. I'm super excited for two chapters. That's going to be pretty overwhelming. And then like 3 more years until the actual game finishes. Hopefully it'll be faster than that. But yeah, super pumped. Chris is not the knight, it's Alvin. Noelle, Des, the angel, it's all gonna fall in line, exactly as I said. Thanks for watching this very rambling video. I have a no hit of Jevil and also like a billion Dark Souls bosses. If you want to check that out.